in this edition of Insight. Who are you? Do you really know? State Archives may have the answer. The Riggs Choirs head to Allstate. And it's the spookiest place in all of Hughes County. We go behind the scenes with the Grambler Pumpkin Patch. That's tonight on Insight. Thanks for joining us. Hey, do you know who you are? I mean, really know who you are? For more than 100 years, the South Dakota State Archives has been preserving important records about who we are as South Dakotans. What do you see people coming to the State Archives for primarily?
Primarily, we see a lot of genealogists. They're coming here to do family research. They use our census records, our newspapers, the immigration records to do family research. We also see authors who are working on books. They come in and do research on South Dakota topics. We've also had filmmakers who have come in and used our photograph collections as well to do their documentaries on South Dakota history. So that's.
How does genealogy change the game for you? You and I were talking before we began that there's a lot of places out there, Ancestry.com, Genealogy.com, that kind of whet people's appetite, but they can only go so far. Eventually, a lot of people want more, and they end up coming to you.
Right. A lot of the records that are available on some of those sites are indexes, like some of the census records are available on sites such as Ancestry, and those give some information, but when you want to dig down deeper and find out more about what that person was really like or what that person was involved in, then you usually have to go to more local sources like the State Archives or a county historical society, someplace like that, to find information on that specific individual. So we are seeing people who are getting excited by finding information on some of these websites, but then they're coming here to find more.
It always amazes me what interests people. When I've been up here and doing my own work, you bump into people and you visit with them about what interests them, and it seems to be the sublime that is most interesting to people, the minutia. They're more interested in the average photograph that someone took honestly of a moment in time than they are the big events. I'm just curious what your experience is with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I tend to hide in the back in my office doing the daily work, and so when I do get out in the research room and ask, what are you working on today? It's the very random things that are very interesting, and like I said, usually people are working on research for genealogy or things like that, but then once you get them talking about what exactly are you looking for, well, we're looking to see if Grandpa really was in prison, well, and things like that. So it's
he was
and so it's the details that you kind of have to pull out to see what it is they're really working on, that above and beyond the whole genealogy. What are you really looking on that's interesting.
And I know from personal experience, you also can help people with a lot of property records, who owned this building or who was connected to this piece of property. We taxed you heavily with the Fort Pierre Bicentennial. Ken Stewart in the front was very, very helpful in giving us the backstory on a lot of things that it's our history, but you don't know where to begin to look.
Right. There's things like that just we're very helpful with. You don't know until you ask, but we get random questions every day. And it's like, oh, wait. So we check our records to see what we have and kind of get creative about where that information might be hidden. It's sometimes things are really logical. We'll check the tax records but sometimes you have to get kind of creative to find out where that information is. So.
You knew I wouldn't come up here without asking to see some of the collection. I understand you have a few things for us to take a look at.
We do. We pulled out some records, and they're in the back in the storage unit. So we'll go and take a look.
Okay, so what are we seeing here?
So these are the 1905 state census cards. The state did state census from every 10 years from 1905 to 1945. And so everyone who was living in the state got their own individual card. So a census taker would go around to each house and take a card and write on a card for everyone who was living in that house. And so they did that for those couple of years. And the reason why these particular census records are valuable is because they fall within the federal census records. So the federal census were 1900, 1910, 1920, 1905, 1915. So if someone was here in South Dakota and you can't find them on the federal census, you can check in the state census and find them. And so some of them are, they're very interesting. Since we couldn't find the Callaghans, we pulled out the Somsens, which is, my husband's family, but it gives the name, where they were living, their age, place of birth, how many years they were in South Dakota, how many years they were in the United States, birthplace. Some of these things over the years are somewhat politically incorrect nowadays, but some of them are, giving an idea of more picture of what that person was like, particularly, that can they read or can they write, their level of education. So these are the census records that are used a lot for genealogy because it gives you the details that you want, where they were living, but then it also gives you more of a picture of what that individual was really like. And you can put the families together by the card numbers in the corner. So, and the addresses of where they were living. So if you don't know, the names of all the children in the family, you can kind of piece it together that way.
That's an important part because a lot of families have pieced together who is living with whom based entirely upon this off-year census taking.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in some years, it's interesting to look at some families. There's extended families living together. Sometimes, like in the 30s and 40s, you'll find families that have taken in individuals as boarders for extra income. So it's just a really an interesting tool to have to track down genealogy.
Shelley, thank you for this tour, and thank you for opening up the archives and giving us this access. You know I enjoy the Grable photos. Thank you for bringing that out. I really appreciate that. But you've got a lot of activities going on the month of October for Archives Month. What's the schedule look like?
All right. So on Tuesday, October 3rd, we have History Trivia Night, which is at the St. Charles at 7 o'clock. And it's South Dakota and just general U.S. trivia. So we form teams. We do trivia, and then the winning team gets a prize, so that's fun.
So you don't necessarily have to know it if you want to learn about it. This would be a fun way to do it.
Right. This is fun. It's a very informal, relaxed way of getting to know South Dakota history. We also have on October 21st at the Capitol Lake Visitor Center, which is a Saturday at 2 o'clock, Ken Stewart will be doing a presentation on Scotty Phillips Cemetery. We did an on-site tour, but now we're going to do a virtual tour at the Capitol Lake Visitor Center so people can see the images, and we'll talk about some of the people that are buried there. And then towards the end of the month, October 30th, which is Monday night, also at the Capitol Lake Visitor Center at 7 o'clock, we've got Murder at the State Archives. And so Matthew Reitzel, who is one of our archivists, and Carol Jennings, who was a former archivist, are going to do a presentation on some of the more historical murders within South Dakota.
A great Halloween theme right there.
Right. So I hope we see some people there. That would be great.
Well, I know from experience, local people love local history, and they support their archives.
I hope so. Yeah.
So when can people visit the archives if they're interested in genealogy or any of the other things that we've discussed here? They can attend.
Right. We are open Monday through Friday from 9 to 4:30. We're also open the first Saturday of every month, also from 9 to 4:30. And again, it's free. There's no charge to come here. Just come and visit.
Well, thanks again, and thanks for giving us the time.
You're welcome.
State Archives is more than just old books and state records. It also includes many contemporary pieces. Something like the recent Fort Pierre Bicentennial celebration is now in their collection. You can find out more at the South Dakota State Archives, and we would like to thank both the South Dakota State Historical Society and the State Archives for inviting our Insight cameras in during National Archives Month.